Everyone has those guilty pleasure movies that they will defend with their lives. Movies that have bombed commercially and critically, and every time you tell someone that you like it, you get weird looks. For me, this movie is 2005's Sahara. I absolutely love this movie, and I never understood why it got so much hate and why it bombed at the box office. In an effort to learn why this movie bombed so hard, I was introduced to the insane story behind the making of it. It's a story that involves bribes to the Moroccan government, lawsuits that spanned over a decade, attempted sabotage from the book's author, and a $2 million shot that wasn't even used in the film. So strap in as we explore the absolute mess that was 2005's Sahara.
We're shooting a 90-day schedule, first unit, 50 some odd days, second unit. We have 3 tanks, 10 APCs, 5 helicopters.
Close to 5,000 extras.
5,000 extras?
2005's Sahara is based on the 1992 Clive Cussler novel of the same name. It is just one of the installments into the Dirk Pitt Adventures, which is a series of action-adventure books that span over several decades, with the first one being published in 1973 and the most recent one being published last year. There was an attempt to adapt this series onto the big screen back in 1980 with the film Raise the Titanic. However, this film received terrible reviews and bombed at the box office, only raking in $7 million against a $35 million budget. The whole experience left a bad taste in Clive Cussler's mouth, so he vowed never to let his books be turned into movies ever again. Obviously, he changed his mind in the 2000s. Paramount Pictures was in search of a new action franchise and approached Cussler with a big fat check in exchange for the film rights to the Dirk Pitt Adventure series. Cussler agreed on the stipulations that he got final say on the director and lead actors, and he got final script approval. Make note of this because it will be very important later on. Breck Eisner was brought in to direct the picture, who was making his feature film debut with Sahara. It may seem odd that a first-time director was given a project with such a huge budget, but when you learn that Breck Eisner is the son of former Disney CEO Michael Eisner, then it makes more sense. Next was to lock down the cast. Author Clive Cussler wanted Salma Hayek to play Eva Rojas, but the producers went with Spanish actress Penelope Cruz. Reportedly, this is because hiring the Spanish actress helped Sahara qualify for a $20 million in-cash incentives to film in Europe. For the role of Al, the filmmakers initially approached Jack Black. However, he passed and it was given to Steve Zahn instead, who was one of my favorite actors of all time. Love this guy.
I knew that door had a lock on it! And everybody was trying to make me feel like I was losing my mind!
Lastly, the lead role of Dirk Pitt was shopped around to many A-listers, such as Tom Cruise, Hugh Jackman, and Christian Bale. But Matthew McConaughey had his eyes set on the role. He was lobbying for the character for 7 years, pestering both Clive Cussler and the producers for the part, and all his persistence paid off. And it paid off handsomely, as he had a paycheck of $8 million. So the team was assembled and the film was ready to start shooting. The production budget that was greenlit was $80 million, but by the time the film was ready to start shooting, it had grown to $100 million, and it would only go up from there. Principal photography kicked off in November of 2003, with it being shot primarily in Morocco, in addition to England and Spain. While shooting, the cast and crew ran into a host of troubles which caused the budget to balloon, such as flooding, sandstorms, and a plague of locusts. But that's not even the tip of the iceberg, as the filmmakers may have broken US law by offering bribes to the Moroccan government while making the film. Here's a quote from a Los Angeles Times article. Courtesy payments, gratuities, and local bribes totaling $237,000 were passed out on locations in Morocco to expedite filming. A $40,000 payment to stop a river improvement project and a $23,000 for political/mayoral support may have run afoul of US law, experts say. Although they managed to avoid any legal prosecution, these bribes were still pretty dubious and raised some flags. The only reason we know all of this is because the budget and other confidential documents were leaked during the lawsuits and trials that followed the film's release. In this budget breakdown, it was also revealed that they spent $100,000 on bottled water and $54,000 on facial disease special effect. But the overspending didn't stop there. They also filmed a 45-second scene of them crashing a vintage airplane, which cost over $2 million to shoot. They ended up cutting the scene because it didn't work in the context of the story. Additionally, while filming the action sequence on the river, one of the boats ran over and destroyed a $250,000 camera, but it was replaced by the movie's insurance carrier, so at least they didn't have to pay for that. By the end of production, that initial $80 million budget that the studio signed off on had turned into $160 million. And with an additional $121 million spent on marketing and distribution, that meant this film needed to make $281 million in order to break even, which it did not do, not at all.
We're hoping some of those days are budgeted for. I'm sure they are if somebody who ever was smart doing the budget.
The film debuted at #1 in the box office on April 8th of 2005, with an opening weekend of $18 million. In the US, it made $68 million, and overseas it made $50 million, for a total worldwide gross of $119 million. When you take out the theater's cut, the net box office for the company was $79 million. Add on the home video, which was $69 million, pay television, which was $16 million, network television, which was $9 million, British subsidy, which was $20 million, and other sources were $8 million. So, the total revenue for this film was $202 million. And judging that the film needed $281 million to break even, that put this film at a loss of $78 million. Thank God the insurance covered that broken camera, or that loss could have been way worse. By the way, all these financial projections are through 2015. The actual loss of the film through 2006 was $105 million. What's funny is if the film had stayed with the original budget of $80 million, it wouldn't have been such a big flop, and probably would have broke even at the box office. The reviews for the film were not much better. The film has a 38% critic and a 53% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, and 2.7 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. The general consensus is that it's a mindless action flick with a crazy plot. These bad reviews definitely factored into the poor box office reception, but that wasn't the only reason that it flopped. As much as I love Matthew McConaughey in this role, marketing-wise, he wasn't the strongest pick. At the time, he was most well known to the general audience as a rom-com lead. Finally, one of the biggest reasons this film failed is it had tons of bad press leading up to its release, such as the drama-filled lawsuits between the author and production companies, and the author himself trying to sabotage its release while on a book tour.
Basically has the potential of being the most enormous cluster of all time. However, we're going to set it up and we're just going to say go and shoot it.
I just want to preface this section by saying I'm not a lawyer, and I'm probably explaining this lawsuit very poorly, but I'm doing my best. In February of 2005, Cussler sued a producer of the film, Philip Anschutz, for $100 million because he failed to consult him on the script. As we discussed earlier, one of Cussler's stipulations on selling the film rights is that he got final script approval. So let's take it all the way back to pre-production of this film to get to the root of the problem. At first, everything was good between the production companies and Cussler. The first draft of the script was done by Thomas Dean Donnelly and Joshua Oppenheimer, which Cussler approved. David Ward was then brought on for revisions, which Cussler also approved. Things began to fall apart in 2001, when Paramount brought in James Hart for more rewrites, which Cussler refused to approve. Cussler said this about Hart's script: "It was terrible. He had all these psychedelic scenes of sunsets and whales and dolphins. It was wild stuff." This caused Cussler to write his own screenplay, which he said incorporated the best of the previous drafts. In total, he wrote 3 screenplays, and producer Karen Baldwin told him Paramount loved them. However, in reality, Paramount did not love them. And 1 year later, in 2002, Josh Friedman was brought in for another round of rewrites, which Cussler absolutely hated. Cussler said this about Friedman's script: "This dialogue is so trite it defies comment. This Josh Friedman should have his keyboard shoved up his anal canal." In late 2002, Thomas Dean Donnelly and Joshua Oppenheimer were brought back on to rewrite the script once again, which Cussler approved with some changes. In early 2003, screenwriters Douglas Cook and David Weisberg were brought on for even more rewrites and met with Cussler to pitch the new draft. And according to an article by the LA Times, after listening to their pitch, which lasted about a half hour, Cussler said, "Well, that's very nice, but that's not my book." Cussler became so upset that a vein in his forehead began to throb, Weisberg said. The novelist then abruptly tuned out the writers by humming aloud. Oh my god. The next screenwriter that was brought in was John Richards, and he gave his pitch to Cussler, who mostly liked it. But when Richards turned in his draft, Cussler thought he deleted too many scenes for his taste, and said that it had the worst dialogue he had ever read. Richards submitted 3 revisions, but became upset with what he regarded as excessive tinkering by Eisner. It got to the point that production was fastly approaching, and they decided to just start shooting with the most recent script, and have several writers on set for any changes they needed to make on the fly. All in all, over 10 screenwriters had a hand in the film, even though only 4 are officially credited. And these writers and rewrites added an additional $3.8 million to the film's production budget. The script they shot with did not get final approval from Cussler, and there's even rumors that they lied to Cussler by putting in scenes he wrote into the script to satisfy him, and then not shooting those scenes. So Cussler sued Anschutz. However, Anschutz countersued for alleged blackmail and sabotage attempts against the film prior to its 2005 release. It is reported that Cussler was difficult when it came to approving the various scripts. This is where some of the accusations of Cussler sabotaging the film stem from. Anschutz's counter lawsuits portray Cussler as an obstructive presence, rejecting numerous revisions of the screenplay and bashing the film in the media before it was released. They claim Cussler delayed the production of Sahara, which increased its cost and harmed its commercial prospects. Cussler reportedly bashed the film on his book tours before it even came out and told his fans to not go and see the movie. He refused to do any press for the movie as well. There were also allegations in these counter lawsuits that Cussler made racist remarks during the writing of the film, but those are not confirmed. On May 15, 2007, a jury found in Anschutz's favor and awarded him $5 million in damages. On May 10th of 2009, the same judge ordered Cussler to pay $13.9 million in legal fees to the production company. A year later, in March of 2010, the California Court of Appeals overturned Judge Shook's decision, and Cussler tried to restart the legal proceedings by filing a new lawsuit. There were no further developments in the case for almost 3 years until December of 2012, when both parties were back in court to hear which side was responsible for paying the case's $20 million legal bill. However, it was declared that there were no prevailing parties for purpose of attorney fees. It concluded that after years of litigation, both sides recovered nothing, not one dime of damages, and no declaratory relief. So in the end, they both were even and nobody won. Oh my god, what an absolute mess. Let's wrap it up.
Treasure hunting plus sexy women plus hysterical banter equals action movie. And that's what we are bringing to life right now.
So that's the insane story behind 2005's Sahara. It's a story that involves bribes to the Moroccan government, lawsuits between the production company and the original author, and filmmakers who spent $100,000 on bottled water. It bombed at the box office, was torn apart by critics, and has mostly been forgotten about. But it still holds a special place in my heart. It has a great soundtrack, a great cast, and is just lots of fun, despite all its flaws and the behind-the-scenes drama. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, maybe hit that subscribe button. This has been Tom from Eisenhower Productions, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.
Hey, Matthew, do you have bloody underwear from riding a camel today?
No, but I got strawberries on my inner thigh.